Okay, I'm going to start with you guys in Spinoza. This is the Ethics, Part 1. All right, so we're going to start right off with definitions. So Spinoza begins the book with definitions. You should know what he's trying to do here is explain everything. And he's going to start by just giving you key terms and what he means by these terms. So the first key term that's really important to know is the term cause of itself, or God, or substance. All that is the same thing. Spinoza's name for substance is God. Now, substance is the real superstar of Part 1. That's what it's all about, on God. So once you understand the notion of God, everything else will follow from that. We don't have a lot of time to be able to take this apart and to do a lot with it. So I'm going to try to do some of the heavy lifting for you and just point to you to certain propositions and scholia to help you to understand him. The way Spinoza wrote this book is he starts with definitions. He tells you these are the key words, pay attention to them. And then he gives you propositions. And the propositions are things to think about. They're claims. He's going to say, this is the case. This is the way things are. If you don't agree with him, then you read the demonstration. And the demonstration is the proof of the proposition. So the proposition is, take this as a statement of truth. Here's something to think about as true. That's what a proposition is. And here's the proof of that truth. This is why it's right. When he thinks he really got it right, he writes at the end of each of these proofs, QED, which is just Latin for quod erat demonstratum, which is, it just means got it. That's what I was going to prove, right? So he's going to give you definitions. Then he's going to give you propositions. The propositions are, here's what I think is true. And then he's going to prove it with demonstrations. And when he thinks he needs to explain it a little bit, then he's going to give you a scholia, which is just explanations, right? So the key terms in Part 1 are God. God is substance, so substance, really. And then attributes and modes, right? Substance, attributes, modes. We're also going to pay attention to the way he defines freedom. So I'm going to quickly just read with you. Now, I am unfortunately using this edition of the book because the one that I ordered for you guys, I left in my office thinking I'd just be back to pick it up. And it's still there because everything's shut down and I'm not going back. I'm not going to get sick. So by cause of itself, I understand that whose essence involves existence. That is God, or substance. Substance is that which has nothing in front of it. Nothing caused it. It is the cause of its own existence. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to prove this to you. We just have to move on. But understand, this is what he means by it. He means something absolutely infinite. Don't let Spinoza's use of the term God get in the way here. When Spinoza talks about God, he's not talking about any kind of God that any religious group has any notion of. Maybe in Hinduism, the notion of Brahma, or what is the all, gets close to it. But Spinoza means by God just everything. It's the word for everything. It's not for any particular thing. It's for everything. Now, because God is everything, or substance is everything is interconnected. So you can think of everything as being made of the same stuff at the most basic level. And the name for that stuff that makes up everything, we're talking about atoms and quarks and muons and nuons and subatomic particles, as well as you and I, and things like computers and television screens and whiteboards and computer screens and monitors. And everything in the world is made of stuff. The word for stuff that makes up all stuff, even dark matter, everything is substance. It's God. It's just stuff, right? It's everything. Now, you can think of everything as being connected to everything else in two ways. But once you understand that what Spinoza means is stuff, everything that is made of stuff is all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. Then you see everything is interconnected in this second way. But there are two ways, and let me give you the first one. The first one we might think of as something like a net. In Hinduism, they have this notion called Indra's net. And in Indra's net, what you've got is a whole bunch of points like this, and then a web that connects every point to every other point, such that when the movement of one point, it affects all the other points, right? Just like a big net that's compiled, or that composes everything in the universe is a point on this net, and everything is interconnected. That's one way of thinking about interconnection. Another way of thinking about interconnection is to think of something like the universe is full, and I'm giving it boundaries here as if it were like a big block. But imagine that the universe is like some big block, right? And it's just chock full of stuff, right? It's just this big block of the same jello. Think of it as like jello. From one point to another, everything is full, and it's all stuff. And every point of this is stuff. And now you might ask, well, if everything was so full, and it was all just like this big block of jello, then how do we get movement of any particular things or differences between one thing and another? And Spinoza's answer for that is, well, what you have is the infinity of substance, which is all the same stuff. Everything is made of the same stuff. It's all connected. It's just one big solid mass of like jello. I mean, he doesn't call it jello. It's just substance. But inside of that substance, there's movement. And sometimes there's substance moving like this, and sometimes there's substance moving like that. And when substance is moving like this, it makes up one mode. And when it's moving like this, it's a different mode. So the only difference between you and me is that you are substance moving in this way, and I am substance moving in this way. But what are we made out of? Stuff. Same stuff. It's all substance. It's all substance, just substance moving in one way or another. And if you think of the universe as full of substance, then what you've got is, if one part moves, it moves the whole in some way. So that everything is choreographic dancing, sort of, and everything moves only where there's space for it to move, right? So the oneness of the whole, the name for that whole is substance. It's what is all. But no one point of that is the substance. It's just made of substance. So the word for the whole is God, and the word for any particular point in that substance, any particular movement or mode, is a mode, right? What am I then? I'm a mode. What are you? You're a mode. What is every particular thing? It's a mode. Even big things are made up of smaller modes, and they make up a bigger mode. And modes just move differently from other modes. You could think of it like air. Air is all the same everywhere, mostly. But if air is moving in one direction, we might give it a name like the Gulf Stream current or the Gulf Stream. Or think of it like water. Water is just this all the same as water in the ocean, right? But some water is moving and it's a current. It's an eddy or an ebb or a flow. Or it's a, what is that? I don't know. It's just current moving in one direction. We can even name it, right? Like a Gulf Stream in the air. And so the name for this particular mode of God that moves in this particular way, that is made up of its particular sort of movement, this mode is called Hiram. The mode that you are is your name, whatever that would be, right? So everything is the same, it's just moving differently. In which case my movements have some impact on every other movement in every other part of the universe in some small way. And every other movement in every part of the universe impacts my mode, because we're all stuck in this substance, and it's all the same everywhere. So infinity is the name for this thing which has no end and no beginning. It is the cause of itself, and it is substance. Another word for that is God. Now you should see then that God is the thing which is absolutely infinite. Any other kind of infinity, like the distance between the numbers 1 and 2, right? You could come up with an infinite number of numbers between there. 1.1, 1.11, 1.111, and so on into infinity. But it would be between this infinity and that infinity, between 1 and 2. That's a particular kind of infinity. If you were to add up all of the particular kinds of infinities you could imagine, you would still not add up to the absolute infinity. The absolute infinity is the infinity of all infinities, right? It is everything. You and I are just modes within infinite everything. An attribute is just what the human mind can consider as belonging to this absolute everything. And absolute infinity involves at least two modes that the human mind has access to, which is physical and mental, right? We are modes. And insofar as we are modes, we are a part of God, but we are not God. And God is not something separate up there in heaven. Heaven is not something separate up there. God is just everything, right? So if you think of God as having emotions, or is located in some particular place like heaven and he's not in hell, or if you think that God could become human like Jesus, or like Ganesha, or like maybe the Buddha, right? Or if you think that God makes plans, has goals, intentions, none of those things belong to Spinoza's God. Spinoza's God is just absolute everything. Therefore, as everything, he can't be taking up some little part of the everything. He's not up there in heaven in that little part of everything, watching the earth down here. That can't be God, because God has no end. And if you think of God as having a form of any sort, then you're giving him some boundary, some end. And God has no end. So he's not even a he, it's not a she, it's not an it. It's just the name for everything, right? I think it's difficult for people to understand what Spinoza means by God because of the word God. And God means to most people some creator being who loves us and has plans for us and wants the best for us. That could exist in Spinoza's universe. There could be such a being as that, but Spinoza would not give that the name God. God is the name for everything. It is just substance. So if you think of God as having love, if you think of God as having plans or interests or desires or goals, some reason for putting man on the earth, for instance, or creating the earth at all, then you don't understand God. So then why is anything created as it is? And the answer is simply because it can be. In infinity, everything that can be is. And the only things that aren't are things that can't be. I'll give you an example of something that cannot be. A square circle cannot exist. And because a square circle cannot exist, it is absolutely impossible, then it cannot be anywhere in the universe. But everything that is possible is. All possibilities are actual. So the only way that things are not actually existent is if they are impossible. If the definition of the thing involves a contradiction, like a square circle, then it cannot be. But all other possibilities necessarily are. All possibilities are actual, if they are possible at all. And, second, all possibilities are actual the moment that they are possibilities. So, I'll give you an example of this. Hiram teaching philosophy at Prairie State College on Tuesday, or let's say Thursday, April the 2nd? On Thursday, April the 2nd, is probably an impossibility. I don't know why it's an impossibility. I don't know the definition well enough of Prairie State Thursday, April the 2nd, 10:30 a.m. and the definition of Hiram. I don't know those well enough to know why those can't be together, like square and circle. But if I did understand the definition of Hiram and the definition of teaching philosophy on April the 2nd at 10:30 at Prairie State College, if I knew the definitions for all of those things, I would see that they involve a contradiction, just like square circle. And because they involve a contradiction, it cannot be. It will not come to pass. It can't happen. So anything that can happen does happen. And anything that does not happen could not happen. And the only reason that I think it could happen is because I'm stupid. I don't know the definition of things. But if I really knew the definition of things, I would see that because God is all that is, and all that is possible is actual, then the only things that are things that could be. And they are at the moment that they could be, and they cease being the moment that they involve a contradiction. So the whole universe operates on possibility becoming actual. As soon as it is possible, it must be actual. And all possibilities are actual. I might think sometimes that I could have been, I don't know, something else, a doctor somewhere, instead of a doctor at Prairie State College teaching philosophy. Maybe I could have been a medical doctor working on brain cancer or something like that. If it's possible, then in some alternate universe, there's a Hiram that's doing that. But I am this possibility, the one that could be. And if it is not possible, then there isn't any other Hiram. And everything in my life that I have lived this far is the life that I must have lived because it was possible. And I think I made all these choices and that I had some influence on how things were going to go. But the truth is that when I was living my life like this, and I thought, oh, I could go this way or I could go that way, the truth is that one of those is always going to be impossible. I just don't know which one it is because of my ignorance. But if I knew all things, I would see that this is in fact an impossible path. It's just that I think it was. And the only way I could go was this way. And that all of my decisions, all of my actions are in fact only the ones that are possible. And there are no others. Therefore, for Spinoza, what this means is if you understand infinity and you understand substance, then you understand what he calls determinism, or what is known as determinism. Determinism is that everything that is possible becomes actual, and if something doesn't become actual, it wasn't even possible. You just thought it was, right? That is, everything is the way that it must be, and there are no other possibilities. This is what we call strong determinism. And for Spinoza, it is the natural consequence of recognizing infinity. If there is infinity, then all things that are possible are actual. Now let me again reemphasize, though, the main point here is that everything is therefore the same. Everything is unified. All things are one, and the name for that one of everything is substance. I know this can be a very difficult thing to wrap your mind around, so let's quickly go through some of these propositions and I'll show you what Spinoza means by this. Okay? Look at Proposition 8. We're going to go to Proposition 8 and Scholium 2. Actually, I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to let you just digest this amount, and then I'm going to go through propositions and show you. But let me quickly then stop. I'm going to do 2.5 more minutes of this. Here are 8 important points that I want to emphasize about part 1, about part 1. Okay, the first, everything is interconnected. Okay, that's just substance, is the name for all things. Second, anything that is possible is actual. Third, this means that God alone is a free cause, but free cause here doesn't mean he thinks about things and decides to do them this way or that way, or he has choices to make. No, it means nothing makes God do anything. He's not a piece in the whole that is moved by things. He is the whole, and therefore nothing has an impact on him. So therefore God is called free. Free here means, then by definition, nothing is forcing it. Nothing is compelling it. It doesn't mean he just arbitrarily makes decisions. God always does what is possible, and what is possible is always actual. But nothing forces it. Nothing acts on it from the outside. So to be free is to not be compelled. I'm going to put this in Heideggerian terms for you. To be free is not to be the they, but is to own your own life. You're not being compelled or forced by something outside of you. You are the cause of your own existence. God is the cause of his own existence, therefore God is the only thing that is free. All the rest of us, we're not actually free. Fourth thing, there's no purpose to life. All things that are possible are actual, and therefore the only things that unfold are the things that can. Nothing else. So you might think you have some ultimate purpose in life, but that's just because you don't understand infinity. But if you understood infinity and you understood that all possibilities are actual, then you would see that everything you think is a purpose is just what has to be. There is no ultimate purpose for anything. It's just the way things are. That's all. Therefore, good and bad aren't in things themselves. It's only in our minds as we judge things. Because everything that happens as it must happen. All possibilities are actual. Therefore, there is no good and bad, right or wrong. There's just what is. And it's our judgments of things that make them good or bad because of our ignorance. But if we understood things as they are, we would just accept things as what they are and neither label them good nor bad. Fifth, that was all ideas are good or bad. Sixth thing, reason, which leads us to these conclusions, and I'll show you in the next video when we go through propositions. Reason, which leads us to these conclusions, will never be the full persuader. It just can't. Humans are not structured so that reason carries the day. We're always going to be moved by our emotions, as we'll see, but reason can persuade us, but it will never, in fact, win. Seventh, human beings prefer order to confusion. We'll figure this out in part 2 and part 3. We like order. We don't really like confusion. And eighth, wonder or religious awe, or the feeling of the sublime, that awe that comes from being at one with nature, say, or having a really great spiritual experience. These depend on our ignorance of the true causes of things. If we understood the true causes of things, we would not wonder or have awe. Okay, those are 8 things that come out of part 1. Again, everything is interconnected. Anything that is possible is actual. God alone is a free cause. There is no ultimate purpose to human life or anything else. All the ideas we have of good or bad are imaginary. Reason can hopefully give us some persuasion, but it's never going to win. Human beings prefer order to confusion, and wonder is dependent on ignorance. Now we're going to go through some propositions in the next video to prove these things. These are claims Spinoza makes in part 1 in one form or other. And if you say, I disagree with all of those, great. Then read part 1 carefully. I'll illustrate some of the propositions, and he will prove to you why he's right. I'm going to say this quickly as long as I'm still talking. I have thought a great deal about Spinoza's view of God. I wish in some ways he hadn't used the word God for it, because this is confusing to people. But if you understand infinity, then you will see that Spinoza got it right. He's just right about these things. You may not like that he's right. For instance, the one that people really don't like is that nothing in life has a purpose. I find this very difficult to deal with. But if you understand infinity, and you really grasp what Spinoza's up to here in part 1, then you see that that is just the case. He's right about this. And now we're going to look at the propositions, and I'll show you why. All right, bye.